So, the elements of spirituality, and it says here the 4 elements as a guide to character and spirituality. Now, when you hear the word elements, I think many of you will think of this, the periodic table, which has got all the elements listed. Well, you'll be glad to know that this is not what we are going to be concerned with this afternoon. This is what we're about here. In Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony says of Brutus, "His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man." And it's this, the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. What elements was Mark Antony talking about when he made that statement? Well, the elements of earth, fire, air, and water. Because in the ancient world, they said that all reality could be divided up into these 4 elements. Now, they didn't actually mean the physical stuff of the earth, like soil and whatever, or the physical stuff of air or of fire. They meant something a little bit more esoteric than that. They meant that these 4 aspects of existence really summed up the whole of experience. I'll explain as I go through what is meant by that. But they said that even individual people could be said to come under the control of one or other of these. And they gave psychological descriptions of individual people. For instance, a person who was dominated by the element water was said to be phlegmatic, meaning, of course, that they had an abundance of phlegm in their system. What do we mean when we use the word phlegmatic? What does it mean? Thoughtful and deep, we would say. And a person who is choleric, now there, indeed, we use that term still, don't we? A choleric person, a fiery person, a person who's full of anger. In fact, the word choler means anger. A sanguine person is a person in whom the air element dominates. Sanguine we use to mean hopeful. A sanguine person is a person who is optimistic. And a melancholic person is one in whom the earth element dominates. Melancholy, gloomy, miserable, slightly kind of depressed, that sort of description. Here's a more modern version, and you can see here the sanguine person. I don't know whether she looks particularly sanguine or hopeful. The melancholy one is quite self-explanatory. Phlegmatic. And the choleric, is this man looking angry? I think possibly he might be, although it could be interpreted possibly in other ways. Carl Jung, the eminent psychiatrist, psychologist, he thought that this way of dividing up human beings was a very useful one, and he in fact devised his own system, which was loosely based upon the ancient system, and we can see what he devised here. And we see that air, thinking people who experience reality through their thoughts, principally, they think things through. This is an extraordinarily Unitarian way of being a human being. Thinking. This is where we tend to concentrate our energies and efforts. Feeling, water. Emotional people, highly emotional people. Intuition, fire. Choleric people, intuitive people, people perhaps who act with spontaneity, who come to conclusions but without perhaps knowing precisely how they got there. People who make leaps of faith. And then sensation, according to Jung. People who experience their life through the way that they sense things. Touch, taste, feel. Those are the elements that are expressed there. Do you have anybody in your own experience that you would call an earth person? And then see whether these apply. Practical. Down to earth. Well, I mean, that is self-explanatory, isn't it? Down to earth, reliable, realistic, stable, patient. These are the kind of people you need. when the plumbing breaks down in the house. Or the people who will find out where you're supposed to be going from the map. The people who know about the practical aspects of life. The kind of people that I need around me all the time because I don't have any of these kind of qualities. Even though these are perhaps not the most glamorous characteristics for a person to have, they are certainly very important. Here's the downside. Stick in the mud, dull, resistant to change. That is what one might say were the worst aspects of being an earth person. Okay, you're extraordinarily good at practical things, but don't kind of set the party alight. You know, that perhaps is what people might say about you. Here are the main characteristics of fire people. Spontaneous, passionate, exciting, dominant, enterprising, energetic. These are the people who get things moving in life. You know, the people who start enterprises, who start businesses. Well, maybe they don't finish them, but at least they get them going. And here are the downside aspects of the choleric or fire person. They can be hot-tempered, impulsive, and aggressive. Those are the things that are possible ways in which this may eventuate. And of course, what you find is, in fact, that in an individual person, they can have all the positive qualities and all the negative ones as well. They can have all, in fact, we all come as a bundle. Everybody's a mixture of all of it. Thoughtful, rational, witty, light-hearted, open-minded, studious. That, in a sense, in one way, fits me and has fitted me all my life. And they have lots of very positive qualities, and they can be the life and soul of the party, and they can be witty and urbane and all the rest of it, light-hearted. They don't take things to heart. They're not too offended. They're not the kind of people who would say, I was really offended by, that kind of response that some people make to life these days. The air people generally don't. They don't perhaps perceive any offence. It might be one of their weaknesses. Here are their drawbacks. Airheaded, impractical, unreliable, spaced out. People who you might, we do say that there are people like this, don't they, who are, their head is in the clouds. Our language often gives us enormous clues as to the way we think about certain types of people. The imagery we use, like when we say stick in the mud, that is an earth-type image for earth-type people. And when we say that a person has their head in the clouds, there is an air-type image for air-type people. And so, sensitive, emotional, mysterious we have, yes, compassionate, kind, and gentle. And, of course, easily offended. That kind of goes with it too, doesn't it? They are the kind of people who would say, well, that offends me. I was deeply offended by that kind of thing. Here are the downside aspects of such a person. Tearful, wishy-washy, oversensitive. Does it apply? So here it is in summary. Here are the characteristics. I've given them the appropriate colour too, by and large. So the earth people are given green print, and the fire red, air is yellow, water blue. When I was a kid, as an air person, my favourite colour was yellow, and even now I am still attracted to yellow. Now, in addition, the ancient world also said, and maybe there's some truth in this too, that the sign that the sun was in when you were born gives you an elemental quality. And these are the ones, according to the old astrologers, these are the elemental qualities of the particular zodiac signs. Now, my birthday is on Monday. I'm a Gemini, the sun is in Gemini, and it's got me absolutely bang to rights. Now these are according again to astrologers, these are the best combinations. So if you are a fire sign, you're better with other fire signs. So if you're an Aries, then the best people for you to be teamed up with are Leo and Sagittarius people. Other fire sign people. Although, I mean, you'd be compatible with them, but I wouldn't really like to be in the household when two fire sign people get together. You know, maybe what we need are not people who are the same as us, but people who complement us. I have no earth, and therefore really need someone around me who has plenty of earth, so that they, can take up the strain in those areas that I find myself sadly lacking in. Anyway, this is not what I want to be particularly concerned about this afternoon, but it's something perhaps that you can consider in your own time. What I'm interested in is not so much the psychology of this, but how it applies to us as a worshipping community. Because it doesn't really matter how accurate this is. What we have to realize is that we are all of different temperaments. The ancient categories of earth, fire, air and water are great. They're useful. They're not absolutely accurate, but they're useful. But if we have different temperaments, how then should our denomination, how then should our worship reflect that fact? And does it? This is the question I want to raise this afternoon. The other stuff is kind of incidental. Look at this. What kind of worship is this? This is fire, isn't it? This is people raising their hands. They're obviously saying, Jesus, we love you, or yay, or hallelujah, or whatever it might be. That's the kind of fire sign worship that, say, evangelicals or Pentecostals are involved in. Do we have any of this kind of stuff? I think you're right. I think it's coming in a bit, isn't it? Do you think there is a resistance to it? This is the issue that really I wanted to talk about. I went to Bradford Church, very different from this. It is brand new. Well, it's only a few decades old, and it has no pews, and it has plenty of variable seating styles possible. They have an organ and a piano. They have everything that you need for contemporary worship, but they don't have a congregation, much anyway. And I was talking to Jimmy Timoney, one of the members there, and he said that we had a discussion about times of service. Should it be in the afternoon? Should it be in the evening? Should it be in the morning? Do we want to interfere with people's lunchtime? And all these kinds of issues are being raised. And he said, none of that matters at the New Life Centre round the corner. Now, I was flicking through the Sky channels one night, and I came across Bradford New Life Centre on one of the religious channels. So I went onto that, and I was utterly astonished. There must have been 1,000 people there in the auditorium on a Sunday morning. 1,000 people, young and old, sitting there, and this very charming and very articulate and very competent preacher talking to them. But it was fire, it was energetic, it was hopeful, it wasn't too analytical. But I thought, I'm going to go there. When I stop being president, I'm going to go and look at what these people have. And if you've got one of these places in your area, it wouldn't do any harm to go and have a look. What are they providing that we are not providing? Is a question I think we need to ask ourselves. So that's the fire style. This is there, isn't it? But what, do you recognize this? Do you recognize one person, generally a man, standing at the front and talking to everybody else? You recognize it? This is Unitarian worship, isn't it? They've even got the banners or the flags around the edges, look. It's a preacher and it's listeners. Unitarianism, not only Unitarianism, there's plenty of this around, but this is air worship. Some people around here have no knowledge of, or so little knowledge of Unitarianism that they think this is what we do. That would be rather nice, wouldn't it? But what kind of worship would you say this is? This is earth, isn't it? These are people who are, I think they're naked, but they are what you would call pagans. Do we have any pagans here in this particular group? I know there's quite a number of Unitarian pagans who follow the seasons of the year and the solstices and all the in-between festivals and whatever. The earth spirit people. I don't suppose many earth spirit Unitarians actually get naked and go around Stonehenge, but that's what... Oh, these are not... It's the first... Yes. It's not good to be earth spirit and British, is it, Claire? And then, what does this look like? A funeral. Well, you're not far away, Martin. What kind of worship, though? I mean, it's the only one that's left, but this is water worship, isn't it? This is probably a Quaker meeting where people sit. Water worship, in that it is meditative. This is one way of expressing it. It's not the only way, really, Mark, but there are others. But it is a kind of meditative, quiet, withdrawing kind of worship. Very different from the fire worship of the first of these slides. This one is a Roman Catholic service, or a very high Anglican. What elements are here? Think about it. Anybody come from the Catholic tradition? I do. Anyone else? What does it incorporate? It is highly symbolic, isn't it?
Bread and wine.
Anna says she thinks it's very earthy because of the appeal to the senses. And she's right, because the incense, the candles, or the candles possibly are more to do with fire. But there is a very sensual element. The music is sensual music. I can go to a Catholic service even now and be very, very moved to the point of the hairs on the back of my head. If you hear somebody singing plain chant, absolutely magnificent stuff. This is earth, experiential, feeling stuff. It's a long way from the air environment. And when it was in Latin, it was even more mysterious, watery, earthy. The Latin, it is wonderful, because then you don't know what it's talking about. Once you do know what it's talking about, it's not so appealing. There's a lot to be said for having things in a foreign tongue. If you go to a Catholic Mass, the first part of it is called the Liturgy of the Word. And there you will find a reading from the Old Testament, a psalm, a reading from the New Testament, and a sermon. That's the first part. That will take you 20 minutes. Then you go into the Liturgy of the Eucharist, which is highly symbolic, and which, you see, the Liturgy of the Word is air, isn't it? That's an air element. Then you have, in the next bit, when the incense starts, and the symbolic, the bread and wine and so on are brought in, then you start to enter the other elements. The point I want to make is, in a way, Roman Catholic worship incorporates all four elements. That's what 2,000 years of experience does. It enables you to work out what's required and to bring it in. What we have done as Unitarians, I think, and this is my opinion, I'm open to discussing this with you. What we have done is throw everything away so that we're left with words. We're left with words, words, words. That's all we have. We've got very few symbolic acts. The hymns are one, perhaps, to some extent we do, but even then, you know what the old saying is, Pat. They say that Unitarians don't sing terribly well because they're always looking ahead to see whether they agree with the next line. And that you see, whereas the Catholics, especially if you're singing in Latin, you don't care what you're singing. You know that the experience is more important than the actual sentiment. Now, I remember reading a book by a UU minister called Sarah York, And she was in the Himalayas, and she got up one morning and she saw this magnificent scene, you know, of the snow-capped mountains in the Himalayas and Mount Everest there. And she started to sing, "Oh God, my God, when I in awesome wonder," you know the hymn. And then she stopped herself after a while. I thought, "Oh God, I can't sing this. I'm a Unitarian. I shouldn't be singing this." But she said it was the first thing that came into my head, and I sang it. And then she realized what really, as a Unitarian, she'd not previously thought about, was that a hymn is more than just the words. A hymn is more than just what the words mean. Now, this is not always easy to get over in Unitarian circles and in religious circles in general. I think the Roman Catholics have got an incorporation of the four elements in a way that we have not, although we're getting a bit better. When I became a Unitarian in the late 80s, there weren't many services you went to where there was a 2 or 3 minute silence. And I know still of congregations where they don't have silent prayer because people want words all the time. I know Unitarian congregations still where no candle is lit because that's considered to be creeping Romanism. What do they want? They want words. Just give me the words, give me the words, give me the facts. That's what we're about, Unitarians. Give me the facts. Let's argue. Let's argue. I remember the old joke, do you remember it? It said, Unitarians have got 3 sacraments: baptism, funerals, and argument. And I used to like that. That used to appeal to me. But I know now that it's rubbish. You know, it's true, but that is our problem. Or it is one of our problems. What have we learned this afternoon, boys and girls? We have different temperaments. I think this goes without saying. When we think about it, it goes without saying. But we don't think about it enough. We don't say, here am I, an air person, but I am surrounded by people who might not be as airy as I am, who have a different temperament and therefore have different needs to me. Now here is the contentious point. If we have different temperament, we need different styles of worship. Do we? I'm asking you the question. I'm not giving you the answer. Do we need different styles of worship to accommodate our different temperaments? And what should our attitude be when innovation occurs? Do we say, I'm uncomfortable with this, I don't like this, I don't like lighting candles? I've heard it. This makes me uncomfortable. I know people who wouldn't even tolerate a joss stick in a church because it made them uncomfortable. Judith Walker-Riggs, one of the great ministers of our time, who was minister in London, did the anniversary service about 20 years ago, and I remember what she said on that occasion. It was so powerful. She said, we have to forget about what suits me, what I want, what I require, and start to think what the people around me might require and how I can best accommodate them and their needs. And she said something which I've never forgotten. She said, if there is not something happening in your church every week which you don't quite agree with, it's not a Unitarian church at all. It's just a nice, cozy little club for people who think like you. We should learn to accept our differences, and yes, I think we do accept our differences. And this, we have complementary skills and talents. As I said earlier, the fact that I can't find my way around is very important, that I have earth sign people around me helping me out. That is so... I was saying only yesterday to Martin that if we had not had a sat-nav, I couldn't have become president, because I'd never have found my way around. And the sat-nav is almost like an earth sign person by my side. Fundamentally, and this I think is of great significance, we need each other. That's what, this is why God made us all different, so that we cooperate, and so that we would recognize that we are not self-sufficient, that we need different people with different temperaments, different styles. Anyway, that's my rant over. I think it's 3 o'clock now. Are you getting a little bit... these are not terribly comfortable, are they? They're not.